You've got there's a little training going on in Decatur, Texas at the NRS Training Center. Is that right?
We do. I've been there 8 years now, and it's just been an outstanding place, phenomenal place to get to do what I love to do and be around people who share the same interests as I do. But it's been outstanding.
And that's a state of the art facility.
Yeah, when David Isham built the NRS Training Center, it was built to be an educational facility. So we try to roll the red carpet out for everybody that comes in there. I mean, from the cookhouse, I cut up because any of you who have been there before know that I'd say most of the time when people come to the training center for the clinics, they come for Lori's cooking, not my teaching. But we feed you well. The bunkhouses are right there, nice motel rooms. Now we've got new cabins. 140-something stalls, 70 hookups, so it's all just right there.
And y'all got state-of-the-art training, dummies and rope rights, and y'all got a lot going on over there. And you're doing 30 to 40 schools a year there, right?
It was right at 38 clinics this year.
And those things are what, 2 or 3 days long?
3 days,
like
3 days long.
3 days long.
That's my job.
Yeah, that's what you're doing.
And I shouldn't even call it a job. That's what I get up and go have fun doing.
It's kind of fun, isn't it? Well, good deal. Well, Krece, I'm going to let you take it away. And folks, he's going to be taking questions. There's not a question he hadn't been asked. He's going to talk about heading and heeling, horse position, ropes, whatever you can dream up. Ask Krece Harris. He helped me with my roping, and I'm an awesome roper now. So y'all listen up, and
I'm learning from you now.
That's right, Krece. I'm going to let you take it away, buddy.
All right, thank you, John.
Yes, sir.
Hey, I just want to say thanks to all of you for taking the time to come listen to me. It's been, 9-10 days into it. I've had a blast doing this because, again, like I just said, I get to do this every day for a living, and it just blows my mind that this is how I make my living. Again, what we were talking about a while ago and what we do at the training center is 90% of everything that we do there is based on education. And what I'd like to talk about, because I've heard Al talking about it, and Clay and Chad were up here a minute ago. Patrick's new DVD is out. We're all working towards that same goal. We're all working towards that same goal of understanding, how to do this sport better and more efficient. And the deal is, 9 times out of 10, we tend to make it harder than what it is, and it's hard enough as it is, right? It's hard enough as it is. What I've done all week, and I wake up every morning and I said, I need to figure out what I'm going to talk about today so I don't say the same thing over and over. But guess what? You kind of got to go over the same stuff, because what we need to understand is the fundamentals of what we're doing are the same. Where we start picking up our bad habits and where we start getting into our binds is we don't go out there with those goals in mind. And that's what I've talked a lot about this week, is just making sure that we understand that when we go to the practice pen, that we're going there for a purpose, and that purpose is I'm going to work on this piece of the puzzle today. I'm going to work on this piece of the puzzle today, or we might just go to the practice pen and work on one piece of the puzzle, and that's it. Okay? Everything that we're doing is all going to tie right back to these horses, agreed? I heard Lady D say it this morning. You don't get to go to those ropings. I've said it all week long. You don't get to load up and go to those ropings and come out of that box on your own 2 feet. It's always on the back of a horse. And 80% of our game is going to be based on that horsemanship. So what I like to start my clinics out by doing and talk about at my clinics is that when we are doing our groundwork is based on what we're going to carry to those horses, okay? Is everybody with me so far in kind of the way I'm approaching this? We know that we can go out there and we can work on our swing, and we can work on getting that swing as perfect as we possibly can. I see the guys that are here that when they rope the dummy, they're working on making sure that swing's comfortable and in place. Everything that we do, if we go out there and do it enough and long enough, becomes muscle memory. It becomes a habit. And when we create those habits, that's what you've got to be able to take and work with. The deal on my end is understanding that we have that purpose when we're working on it. So I'm going to walk you through some of the stuff that I see on a daily basis. Again, what John mentioned a minute ago, the questions, if y'all have any questions, fire away. Because I promise you, I've heard it, I've seen it, and I've talked about it. I'm going to base everything right back to those fundamentals. For example, when I'm roping the dummy, if I step up and I rope the dummy, and I'm getting everything out here in front, I see a lot of people that go to splitting the horns, and you're sitting there looking at them and you're saying, oh, it looks like a pretty good swing right there. Everything looks like it's matched up. Can I still rope that dummy from right there? You bet I can, all day long. All day long. But there's just one little thing, in my opinion, with this particular swing right here that's out of place. And what it is, this becomes comfortable to me because I do it long enough. Where's the lowest point of my swing right here? It's right over there, isn't it? So what am I going to do to catch that right horn? I'm going to accelerate it and push it off over there. When we do that, what usually happens when we accelerate that delivery? We split the horns. We split the horns. If I can open this up and get my muscle memory to where my tip is out here a little bit more, now my tip is coming across those horns, I don't have to rush anything. Does that make sense to everyone? And I want to tie this right back into your horse in just a minute. When I see this, the biggest question asked right there, especially at the clinics, do you step right foot forward or left foot forward? How many of you have wondered that before? I'm not going to sit here and say that it's right foot forward or left foot forward as long as you do what? You got to keep your shoulder square to your target. That's any other sport that's out there. So if I'm going to step right foot forward, there's nothing wrong with that, as long as when I step right foot forward, my shoulders stay square over there. My shoulders are going to stay that direction, even though my right foot's forward right there. Now at my clinics, and especially at the beginner clinics, I will stress more on the side of let's step with our left foot forward for somebody who's just getting started in the sport. For that reason, I'm trying to get their shoulders square to that target. But it's pretty simple to see that if I get everything out in front and my swing is here, we can get pretty confident, and I can get confident roping the dummy right there. And because I catch in my mind, I'm convincing myself that I've got this. And we all know, I mean, when you're roping on confidence, you're going to go catch. You're going to go catch. But all it takes is for those horses to take one step, that steer to take one step, that steer to move away from you. How many of you have had that happen to you, that those steers running that pattern, right as you get to them, they step away from you? Now everything's got to adjust. If I make this more of a habit in my mind, muscle memory, if I make this more of a habit, that when I'm roping the dummy, the first move I'm going to make is open and swing out and get my rope turned over, I've already got that established. As soon as I leave the corner of the box, I'll open. It's right there. And I'm set and ready to let go of my rope. Now, I've talked about this part of it all week. As a header, we're all going to go through this. And I have students tell me this every day. My horse feels really, really good on faster steers. Why is that? We're simplifying this process, right? Faster steers, what's your horse doing? He's running. He's flat. She's running. She's flat. Everything is down, out of your way. It makes it easier to swing that rope. And then we get caught up. That steer is a little faster, more adrenaline. It's fun. It's fun. We get the adrenaline pumping, so it's a lot more fun. But how much money have we won on those hard-running steers? Not very much. And so after we run that hard-running steer in the practice pen, we come back and then we draw one in the practice pen that's a little bit slower. And what's the first thing that happens on that slower steer? We come out on them, and now where are we at? Backing those horses off. And I'll have people ask me, say, I'm having a hard time getting my head horse to rate. I'll check him off, went and bought a bigger bit, went and changed bits, missed 2 or 3 of those slow ones, went and got a new rope, thought it might have been my rope. And here's the deal. We can get those horses backing off. They need to be forgiving to us, but we can get those horses backing off if we're what? If we're ready. So if I make this a habit right here on my groundwork, when I get there, I'm ready to let go of my rope to where when I get to position, it's ready to come out of my hand. If I'm not ready, then the first thing I'm going to do is this. Agreed? Now look at where it puts my shoulders. As soon as I start pulling here, it's going to move this arm back off over here, and I'm going to get stiff, and all I'm going to do is ask my horse to run. Okay? So I've gone as far as taking a lot of those horses that are like that. You take some of those horses, and as you're going to your target, if they feel like they're just running off with you, I'll just let go of my rope and sit down and stop. I'm going to tie it back to Horsemanship 101. How do we stop our horses? Sit down, quit riding. Agreed? But if I'm still up there riding and I'm pulling, all I'm asking that horse to do is run out from underneath me. Agreed? If I'll yield to my horse and I'll relax and I'll stay in control of my own body, and I get relaxed and I'm ready, I can go into a delivery, and as soon as I rip that slack and sit down, my horse is going to come back to me a lot sooner. That's probably the number one question I have asked, is I can't get my horse to back off on slower steers. And I'm like, those are the ones that we need to know how to catch. Because when you get to that short round, that's the steer you want. So the easiest way to do that is just practice being ready when you get to position. The most common thing we do is chase with our chin. We chase with our chin. When the gates bang, we chase our target with our chin instead of with our horse. So getting rocked back, it leads to so many different things that can cause the run to go wrong, and all we're doing is going about it the wrong way. If I'm in the corner of the box and I nod my head and I release and I open, I'm putting my right leg on my horse, which asks my horse to pick up the left lead. If I chase with my chin and my shoulders get squared to my horse's head, my left foot goes back, goes against my horse, it throws him into the wrong lead, which would be the right lead. Don't confuse me there. All right? Okay? Then we end up getting to them, and as we get to them, we're stuck in this position. We don't have balance. We've put the heaviest part of our body, which is our waist up, over the heaviest part of the horse's body, which is their shoulders, and we're making them run downhill so they can't collect. But I'm stuck in this position, and right here is where we start trying to move them away, okay? Hello, Miss Sharp. We start trying to move those horses way off that left hand, and all that happens right there is we get their body twisted. When we get those horses' bodies twisted, then they can't balance to do their job. Then you start going to the vet for hock work, chiropractic work, so on and so forth. So again, I'm just after consistency on my groundwork. After consistency on my groundwork. Here, I want to treat it just like a 3-lane highway. As a header, I'm in the left-hand lane, the steer's in the middle lane, and the heeler's in the right-hand lane. My job is to ride to a spot, position, be ready to catch. When I pull my slack, I can ride my horse out from right here. I can step up and out. I have control. But if my body is out of balance in that saddle, now I'm just a passenger. I'm not the pilot.
Folks, real quick, stop
Okay?
by the Spalding
Does
Fly
anybody have any
They've got a
questions
special
about that?
deal going over there. Mr. R.M. Miller
Hey,
is
I
over there
want
signing,
to touch base on one more
signing,
thing right there
calendars
when
over
I was
there.
talking about
And,
balance. I want to
he's
go
an
through
author,
one more
he's an
deal on the
illustrator,
balance side of it,
and,
because
it's a really
I'm
neat
a
deal. It's
fan
doing
of
it for
every
free.
time
He's
we
only
pick
there
these
for
ropes up,
just a little
especially
bit.
you see
So
these
stop by the
kids.
Spalding Fly
They pick these
Predator
ropes
booth
up, and I mean,
get
just
your,
because they always have one in their
get your,
hand, they're doing
signed,
stuff,
calendar over
little
there
by
for
little,
Mr.
they get
R.M.
better and
Miller.
better with it because it just becomes a part of them, right? Becomes a part of them. As long as you're handling your rope, you're going to get better with it. I have people talk about, do you start out with a smaller loop? Yeah, we want to start out with the smaller loops and feed into a bigger loop. That way it makes it easier for us to get it up and get it going. We start out with those real big loops in the beginning. It makes it a lot harder to get that up and get it going. And the last thing I want is my tip up. I want my tip down whenever I get to position to where I'm ready to rope. Or I want my tip matched at my target. Okay? You'll watch a lot of the guys at the rodeo when they back in the corner of the box and they're this far away from that steer. When they pick up, that tip is out there towards that steer. But you'll see them The exact same person at a jackpot, when they pick that rope up, that tip is down like this. Why? Because they're going to ride all the way to that spot to catch. Agreed? So all they're trying to do is get their tip matched to that target to where, if that's the case, I know right here my tip is not matched to my target. If I let go at the lowest point, it's not going to do it, right? For me to simplify the catching process, if I've got my tip matched at my target and I let go at the lowest point, it just goes to that target. Okay? So that's why I look at people and I say, don't put so much effort into that delivery. Let's just get to working on that swing and making sure that our tip of our rope's going in that direction. Now, for those of you who are having more of a hard time getting your arm up and your tip down, and I know a lot of people out there that their shoulders don't work as good as they used to, their elbows don't work as good as they used to. There's nothing wrong with that. You can still swing that rope over here. My tip is not completely matched to my target, but what I can do is I just slow my delivery down. I wait on it to come across and over before I pull my slack out. You'll hear people carry on and talk about, and we've heard it, that you're supposed to deliver slower than you're swinging. Because if we accelerate our delivery, our loop does that and that. If we slow our delivery down, our loop does that. It opens. My chances of catching are so much greater if I'll back my delivery off just a little bit to let my loop open up. I've heard Tyler Magnus talk about it. He said less is more, and what he means right there is we're riding those horses to position, heading or heeling, and we know that the heeling is going to be a little bit more of a finesse loop. But like Chad, I watched Chad, he can swing real quick, but then he'll slow that delivery down and really let that loop open up, and as it goes across that left horn, he's getting his slack out. So the fastest point of his running is his slack. He can be hustling that rope speed right here, and then he's going to slow it down, got it on, and rip it out. As soon as it crosses over that left horn, he rips it out. Okay? So keep that in mind, because I like to relate golfing and roping together, and my golfing stinks. But when you hit a golf ball, you're hitting the golf ball with what? Club head, the piece that's furthest from your hands. When we're roping, guess what we're catching with? The tip, the furthest piece from our hands. So we have to wait on that tip to go in the direction that we want it to before we let it go. And when we do that, that's what allows it to open up. Okay? Yes, sir.
I know it's kind of against the fundamentals, and I just like to see maybe you demonstrate it, but the new thing that the kids are going to with the Camis Jennings, roping the heads in one motion versus T and all of them putting a curl in that. Can you talk about that some?
You may have asked me a question I've never heard before. Let's say that again, where the kids are...
Well, like, Camis Jennings came out with an article not long ago, but he's starting, to just be quicker and quicker and quicker. He's roping the heads in one motion, and yes, they kind of talked to T. Woolman about it. It's against the fundamentals and getting the curl in it, but it's just a snap.
Right. Well, it's that same deal that we just talked about. It's the same deal. I mean, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if, Camish is that far away. He's dropping 2 coils, 3 coils, reaching and roping. We're seeing some of that here at the rodeo, right? Whenever those guys are reaching and roping, they still have to finish their delivery. And when they're snapping it out, it's when it's crossing over that left horn. That's when we're supposed to. I had a guy come up to me yesterday and say, my daughter, she's been roping, she's catching right horn, left horn every single time, and it's going on clean. Well, actually, her loop was going on the head pretty much at the same time. She's still presenting her tip, right horn, left horn, but it's going on. But every time it would come back around, and the tip of the rope would catch the right horn. Well, every time she would finish off over here like that to make she was following through. By the time her hand got here, that tip was already back to that right horn. And what I'm getting into here to address your question is I don't read more into that, because I agree with T. The fundamentals are still the same fundamentals, okay? That blueprint is still my blueprint. There's my delivery, there's my right horn, there's my left horn, and when I come down through the left horn, it's coming out. It's coming out. So that's more of what we see right there as opposed to this deal of, that's why I made that little comment about her tip coming back around catching that right horn. She was working so much on following through that she was sweeping that hand all the way across over to here. By the time she get her slack, it's already got that right horn caught again. If my hand comes down through that left horn, I'm ready for slack right there, as opposed to the fundamentals, making sure that we come all the way across. See where that tip wrapped all the way back around? And that's all that was happening to it. So that, again, that's a good question because I think it goes back to what I talked about. Right horn, because you hear a lot of people say it. Am I roping right horn and then left horn, or am I roping both horns at the same time? Our tip is still presenting itself like that, but it's coming out of our hand and opening up at our target. Just slow it down, open it up. Yes, sir.
That is probably just shortcut.
Sure. There's always somebody out there looking to make it snappier and faster. Always. I've said it all week long. I mean, I remember 30 years ago, 40 years ago, my dad ran his company with pen and paper. Now they do it with computers. You can still do it that way, it's just not as efficient. So, as long as my blueprints are on my groundwork that I want to be balanced and I want to be under control, again, it doesn't matter. And whenever I deliver my rope, that I open my loop up and I finish what I start right there, then I can get my slack out and ride my horse. This is going to lead me into one more thing right here before I move into the hillside. Something as simple as this right here. If I drop my rope out there and I go into my delivery, and my hand is always staying down like this. Does everybody see where my slack's at? It's at the end of my coils, correct? What's the first move I want to make when I pull my slack? I want to pull that back so I can find my slack. Or I'm going to try to lean over even more to find my slack. Now look at the difference if I lock my wrist up. When I go into my delivery, where's my slack? Right there. And you wouldn't believe how many people I see do that and don't even realize they do it. They don't even realize they do that. I've had some of those guys come into clinics 6'3", 4", probably weigh 280, arms on them like that, and they've got their wrist down like that, and I'll walk up and I'll grab them by the wrist and I'll hold their hand down and say, pick up, and they can't even pick up on me. I say, okay, lock your wrist up, and as soon as they lock their wrist up, they pick me up off the ground. And what's the first thing they have? They have no balance here. They have balance here. So why in my mind are we trying to recreate something that if it doesn't work in football, basketball, I mean, that's what we've always been taught by coaches. Get balanced, get square. Agreed? And when it comes to the horsemanship side, yes, sir? No, when it comes to the horsemanship side of it, it's balance. It's balance. If I've got all of my weight strung out over the top of my horse and that right shoulder, that would be like me walking up to that first tee box and doing this with that driver. Okay, I've got to hit this ball 250 to 300 yards. Let's see how well I can do it on one foot, because that's basically what I'm doing here. Well, I can't control where that club head is coming through that ball. Agreed? When I get my balance in that saddle. And this is where I was going with this. To this day, I haven't seen those barrel racers run those horses down that center alleyway and get to that first barrel, and right before they get to that barrel, they stand up. They're staying in that spot. They're riding that horse into that barrel and around that barrel. I haven't seen the reiners slide those horses 20 foot to a stop, and right before they say, whoa, they stand up. Why? Yeah, they're going to be on the ground, agreed? I can go on with every discipline of horsemanship. And I've commented on it all week long, because I remember when I was little that I was taught you can't rope sitting flat on your bottom. You got to get up. You got to get out over your horse to rope. How many of you have heard that? Yeah, I see a lot of head shaking out there. I see a lot of head shaking. There was a man that was standing here a while ago. He's up on stage, and it's amazing to me, but it took all of us a full decade to figure out how he did it on the heeling side. And in the process, he won 7 gold buckles. Okay? Stayed right in the middle of his horse, rode his horse, stayed with the hip of the steer, and when the steer hopped away, he roped him. The rest of us crawling out over those horses, and when we moved out over the front of our horses, their shoulder got heavy. When their shoulder got heavy, they pegged that front end down, and it trapped us. How many of you have had that happen to you when you heeled? Yeah. I mean, again, it took us a while because we were taught that for so long. Can you still rope like that? You bet you can. You bet you can. Just not very many people do it that way anymore. And that seems to be one of the hardest things that I've seen people try to break, is get back in their saddle and learn to ride. I never said, headers, that you wouldn't lean. I never said that. Because when I go into my delivery, my arm's going to go, and then my body's going to follow it, and my toes are going to roll down to finish my delivery. But as soon as I rip that slack, what do I need to do? I need to get back on my pockets and get my feet under my shoulders so I can ride my horse. And if I'm not going to the practice pen practicing that way, then all I'm doing is recreating bad habits. Go ahead, Larry.
Krece, I've been there with you several times. We've had a lot of fun watching you hit the dirt. For the little guys, you said something about your left foot or right foot. You don't care how you step. I'm
Right.
trying to, because I can't do what you do.
Right.
I always try to tell my step on his left, and then when he gets to his horse, he's not.
Right.
He can still get it, but he's not square, and I don't want him to have a bad habit.
Exactly. The biggest deal, did everybody hear his question? Trying to get these youngsters to where, how do you help those youngsters to where they're picking up the correct habits more or less right now? That just, again, I've watched him handle the rope already. And it's like you told me, from the time he was 18 months old, he's had one in his hand. Okay? Just make sure that if his right foot is forward, he's still trying to square up over here. He's still trying to get, it's not so much this as it is this. Okay? It's not so much that. But in the process of doing this, I want to be able to keep my balance. Even if I'm walking to the dummy. Even if I'm walking to the dummy. If I back away from it and I walk to it, I think walking to the dummy is great exercise, and it's a great training tool. Why? Because it's teaching me timing. It's teaching me timing. I don't want to get to position and back my horse off. I want to get to position rope. So as I'm stepping to it, I want to go ahead and go into that delivery. I want to be ready for it. But I also know that I want to try to get my horse collected right there, because as soon as I get balanced, my horse can balance. And if my shoulders aren't square to that steer anymore and they get square back up over here, where's my horse going to go? He's going to move out. He's going to move out. Okay? Good question. Good questions. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Do you have a rule of thumb on when to start swinging when you're coming on the box?
It just depends on the setup, in my opinion. And again, you've heard these guys talk about it all week. We know that this is a fast setup, so you know when they nod their head, they're going to start swinging their rope. But you can also load up and go to some rodeos to where it's a longer score, a longer setup, and they've got to go run them down, so they may not pick that swing up until they're 1 or 2 strides out of the box. But again, they want to make sure that they're ready when they get there. It's getting to the point anymore to where there's so many of these headers, it can be an 18-foot score, and they can still drop 2 or 3 coils and be 4 or 5 on a steer, right? I mean, they can reach out there and get them hooked. So it's, they may recognize that steer. That's why you always see them sitting on the back of the box. They're trying to remember those cattle to say, even though it's a long score, that steer might be on the better end of them, a little bit slower. I want to take advantage of him right there. Now, on a long score, long setup, hard running steers, I'm not going to come across the line swinging my rope right there. I'm going to come across the line riding my horse and helping my horse. And as I'm gaining, then I'll pick it up and get it ready. Okay? Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Some people start in the box with the rope tucked under. Some people start in the box with the rope tucked like this.
It's personal preference, in my opinion. That kind of goes back to people ask me, do you look at the right horn, the base of the horns, or the middle of the left horn, or what do you look at when you rope? You know, it's personal preference. I tuck my rope because that's what I'm used to. And it keeps it out of my way when I do open up. A lot of times when I see people hang their rope, they'll throw it back over their horse's tail. You know, that's all it takes, or they'll drop their arm and their horse's back leg will step in it. So I do tuck my rope. I do tuck my rope. Okay? Hey, there is one, yes sir, I'm sorry.
At a school I was at a long time ago with Leon. I wasn't squaring up and I would keep my shoulders up. He took my right stirrup up.
Took your right stirrup off?
No, he took it up.
Took it up.
Shorter. You know, when it hit me that doing that deal.
Sure.
But I don't know whether that's worth doing or not worth doing. It's just something he was trying to help me.
No, I
I
agree.
wasn't listening, I think.
I agree with him because I hear so many people say, you know, they ride a longer stirrup. Well, I mean, in my mind, if my stirrups are long and I'm reaching for them, where are my toes? They're down. Where are my heels? Up. Where's my body weight going? Forward. I mean, everything is going to be moving like this, so now I don't have any balance. So, you know, that's the first question a lot of people ask me, and I mean, that's something as simple as that. How many of you in here ride oxbow stirrups to rope out of? Real narrow bottom oxbow stirrups. You don't. There you go, Juan. Yeah, and here's why. I mean, just that simple deal right there. The more narrow your stirrups are at the bottom, your toes are going to roll down faster. When your toes roll down, you're going forward. That's why we ride those 3 or 4 inch wide bottom stirrups at the bottom to give us more stability underneath our shoulders. Just something that simple. So I agree with that, because I'm usually trying to take students' stirrups up to get them to where they've got their balance underneath their shoulders instead of out over that horse's shoulder. And again, I base that on the horse too. If I've got a horse that's pretty narrow, I'm going to bring my stirrups up even more so I can have leg contact. If I've got a horse that's built like a 55-gallon drum, I can let my stirrups out a little bit more because my legs are already on them. But it's usually no more than 1 hole either. That's the difference. I mean, I adjust my stirrups 1 hole according to the horses I ride. Hey, the last thing on this side that I wanted to talk to you about, and then I'll get into the healing, is how many of you have had the problem of that rope coming off that left horn? If we've had it long enough, you've done it long enough, you're going to run up there, you're going to rope and wave it off that left horn. And here's what I'm going to go right back to the beginning of my seminar. Let's simplify this as much as we can. What ends up happening 9 times out of 10, unless the steer drops his head and rolls that horn down to make it tougher, and you can still keep it on them that do that, is when you deliver your rope, the eye of your rope is about that far from the base of the horns, okay? Does everybody see what I'm talking about? So here's the result that you get. Where's the tip of my rope as that comes around? So when I start to pull this, does everybody see how it's going to roll up? If I get this closer to the base of the horns, this is the result you get. The tip comes back to where it curls under. Okay? You're saying, okay, what causes that? I just didn't take the time to finish my delivery. I didn't take the time to finish my delivery, and that is that when I went into my delivery, I shorted out right here, and I got to thinking more about pulling slack than finishing what I started. You'll see a lot of people do a one-hand delivery, and that means their left hand gets stuck right here, and they'll do that with that hand. Well, that's once it comes out of my hand, my left hand's pulling it back. What I want to do is extend it to that target. So if it's the way that I pull my slack, if I pull my slack at the left horn, it should come off, agreed? So if I step up my rope that dummy and I pull my slack at that left horn, it should be coming off. My whole deal is making sure that I finish that delivery, okay? Finish the delivery. So if you're having that problem, understand that it's probably not the rope. We're all guilty of that one, right? We're all guilty of that one. The first thing we want to do when we miss is go change ropes, all right? It probably means that I didn't finish what I started, and that is go all the way into my delivery. Go all the way into my delivery. I like watching David Key whenever he heads, because I've watched him rope cattle that have horns on them that long, and he'll 2 coils and keep it on the horns. There's a lot of finish right there, a lot of finish. Given that rope the time it takes to finish what he went out there to do before he pulls the slack.